Hello, everyone. This is the third episode of the PokéSells Official Podcast. My name is Rocco Mitchell, and I'm your host. And I'm super thrilled today to have with me the amazing Jesse Peng. I hope I said that right. And if I didn't, please correct me. But hello, Jesse. I would love if you could just introduce yourself and just introduce yourself and tell us how you just got into your Pokemon journey.
Okay, yeah. So, first of all, thanks for having me on, Rocco. I always love supporting young entrepreneurs like yourself. My name is Jesse Peng for Rocco's audience. I'm actually 31 years old. A lot of people think everyone in Pokemon's pretty young. I'm probably one of the older statesmen here. I'm born in 1993, so I grew up in the 90s when Pokemon was at its inception, and back in 1996 for the Japanese stuff, in 1999 when I was 6 years old. So that's how I got into it. I've been collecting ever since I was a little kid, and obviously I stopped for a decade in the middle, just like everybody else, and came back in briefly in 2016 during the Pokemon Go boom, and also in 2019 around the Hidden Fates era, right before the 2020 pandemic. And what I do for a living, I am actually an entrepreneur and an investor, and I know many people say that it's like you have the hashtag investor, crypto bro, whatever, but I'm a computer engineer. I've built multiple startups in the tech space ever since I was in college back in the early 2010s. I built a portfolio in real estate and technology, also a digital marketing company called Limitless Global Media, and we own the largest real estate marketing company in the world. Well, I mean, in terms of by influence luxury listings, and I stepped down from that position in 2023. So long story short, I'm in the tech space, I'm in real estate, and I invest in anything from tech startups to real estate to companies that are in the product space, in the health space like Slab Mags, and also my new company in the health and foods industry called Your Vitality Improvement Projects. And I also co-own a shop with my wife, Van City CJ Dong, called Van City CJ Trading Cards here in Vancouver, Canada. So my wife and I are a longtime collectors, and the shop was a passion project and a hobby of ours for the first 3 years. We actually didn't pay ourselves anything for the first 3 years, and the profits that we had, we donated to different charities, to the hospital, and the rest of the money was used towards our just our collection and stuff. So recently in 2024, we had the shop for 4 years. I was really thinking about closing the shop down because of the opportunity cost for my wife to be there full time every day. And when we were thinking about doing it, our friends are like, hey, absolutely, you can't do that because we have to have that place to hang out. So in my head, I had to turn it into more of a business because the opportunity cost of having a shop basically just for your passion was kind of getting too high. So we rebranded, and I utilized a lot of the skills that I've learned from building my marketing companies and applied it to our trading card business. And we went from doing I believe around 30K a month to 300K a month in August. And since August, in the last 4 months, we've done over 1.2 million, I believe. So we set the goal when I got involved this year in April to have $1 million a year. And year to date, with 1 month left, we're at 1.6, I believe. So so we grew the trading card business into a 7-figure business in the span of 3.5, 4 years. But like I mentioned, the first 3 years was kind of strictly a hobby and passion project for us. So longtime collectors, card shop owner, entrepreneur and investor is kind of who I am.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's literally that's everything. That's so cool. I also I did before I went into Pokemon, I did a little social media marketing stuff, so I do understand kind of that space too. But that's really cool. That's literally like you saying that that's your passion project. That's kind of like what I was thinking about in the for me, until I really kind of saw like the actual value in the Pokemon TCG space, and I was like, oh, actually, I could turn this into a business instead of actually doing something that might not be so fun, and then doing it on the side, I can really just go full in on it, which I started doing, and it's been great. But that's awesome. It's quite the resume for a 31-year-old. I mean, that's awesome that you've been able to do that in such a short amount of time.
I know you're
Yeah.
16, but I feel like I'm just getting started at 31. So you're just
Yeah.
getting started to get started.
Yeah. It's like the preseason. Like the preseason,
Yeah,
I
that's
feel.
right.
Yeah.
Summer league.
Yeah. So that's really cool. Yeah, you kind of touched up on, like, so you've owned the shop for about 4 years. That's, for me, is what I really want to do in the future, is own my own shop. And the fact that you could run that up to a 7-figure business is really cool. And I see all your slabs back there. Are you more like, you focus more on high-end type stuff, or you kind of just do everything?
Yeah, well, for our personal collection, we try and collect the absolute best cards of everything that I wanted as a kid, which is
Mhm.
why my collection is very heavily concentrated on English, WotC, Grail cards in pristine
Mhm.
condition. So, like, to me, it sounds really controversial, but PSA 10s are a bit too weak for me. I've completed the PSA 10 Gold Star set years ago, and I've been trying to get the best copies of each card that I wanted as a kid
Mhm.
for as long as I was back into the hobby. So I actually kept my collection relatively private and didn't have a Pokemon Instagram account until this year. But anybody that's in the high end space already knew who I was over the last 4 or 5 years. I just didn't really share it. And then I started sharing um, my collection. Obviously, we have a multi 7-figure collection that's not for sale. Like, people don't
Yeah.
really separate them as sellers, but we have a very distinct separation of our personal collection and the shop inventory. And
Mhm.
the stuff in our personal collection is pretty much like just untouchable. I don't care how much money you throw at me. That's
Mhm.
why we're collectors at heart. And yeah, some people just didn't know. Most people knew who my wife was because she had the account for like 4 or 5 years, but they kind of just thought I was some random like real estate or like wealthy person that came into the space and bought everything in the last like 2 months, and then
Yeah.
boom, like here I am. But I've actually been around for longer than most people that are in the hobby was born, right? Like I
Yeah.
I don't know if you see my pictures of um me as a 6-year-old kid. Every picture that I have of me
Mhm.
back in the day, I was holding a binder of Pokemon cards and a Pikachu with me. So
Yeah.
I'm a
It's
Pokemon fan here. And yeah,
yeah, it's in your
it's
blood.
just
It's in
like
your
for
DNA.
us, yeah, it's all about collecting, and everything
Yeah.
else comes second.
That's really cool. You got the Gold Star Rayquaza recently.
Yeah.
That was the pristine 10. That's super cool.
Oh,
But
we had
that's
that for a year, but I've had many PSA 10s in the past.
that's really cool. It's really, really cool. Um, Sorry, I'm trying to find my notes. Cool. The reason why I reached out to you was because, and what I'm kind of trying to focus on was this podcast, was you made a comment on, I don't know what you made a comment on. I just saw your story. So I don't really know the whole backstory of everything. But I saw that you made a comment on people that, obviously Pokemon's a big community, big space. And there's a lot of money being exchanged in the Pokemon industry all the time. Multiple like 6-figure cars, and some of them are being ran by, there's like kids that are 25, 24, obviously older than me but younger than you, who have like huge deals that are making like what, 6 figures a year just flipping cardboard and all this type of stuff. And you kind of, I think what you said was pretty much along the lines like, like, take, like, what you have is very serious, like if you're flipping a 6-figure card at a card show, that's like someone's whole paycheck, a whole yearly
Mhm.
paycheck in one year. Or some people don't see that amount of money, but you're just kind of playing around with it. And that's something that I was very, like, I agreed with, because there obviously there's the collectors. We're all collectors at the end of the day. I love how you said you have a distinct separation between your personal collection and your shop inventory. That's awesome. I don't really have a personal collection right now. I have like a couple cards that I had from my childhood binder that are in like just not really good condition, so I can't really sell them. But I have quite that distinct line. Most of those go into decks that I play with for the competitive side. But it's very serious. There is a serious aspect to it. There's a lot of money being exchanged, and I really enjoyed you saying that. And kind of just what I want to talk about today is how, I guess, how you see the Pokemon space coming in from, like, obviously you have multiple businesses that you've done, that you've started up, that you've invested in. How do you, having all that experience, see the Pokemon space?
Okay, first of all, I found a few pictures of me as a kid. There's the
That's super,
first
yeah.
Pikachu. The
Yeah.
crazy thing is, I still have that guy.
Oh, wow, that's
Showing
awesome.
up there. I can grab
Yeah.
him a little bit later. But yeah, anytime you have a picture of me as a kid, there's like 7-year-old me flipping
Yeah.
through the cards, like
Yeah.
I'm an OG, man. I've been around for a
Yeah.
long time. There it
That's
is, right?
awesome.
So I mean, I was way younger than you guys.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
anyways, this is my childhood, and obviously I've been blessed and fortunate enough to not rely on Pokemon cards as a primary source of income, which gives me the ability to have a personal collection. I understand it's really hard for a lot of younger people because you need the startup capital from the cards, selling the cards to scale and grow bigger. So I'm not saying not having a personal collection is an absolute must for most people, but I still think it doesn't have to be a large collection. You still have cards. You should still have cards that mean something to you, regardless of the value, and that kind of like keeps you sane and keeps you reminds you of like why you started doing this in the first
Yeah.
place. I hope the people are in the space is not here purely for the money. Obviously, it's a very lucrative space, and that allows a lot of young people to make a lot of money at a very young age. But I hope it's still driven by passion, and that's what most of the good people that I've met through the community, and that's the number one gift that I felt like the community had to me, is I met some of my best lifelong friends in this journey over the last 5 years. I hope it's still driven by passion. But what I was trying to say in the series of story posts was, it was an encounter with a certain person in the hobby. I'm not going to mention his name anymore. I actually
Yeah.
deleted it to give him a second chance. But being in the space that I have been outside of Pokemon, in the business space, a level of professionalism is required
Mm-hmm.
when you deal with 5, 6, 7-figure transactions.
Yeah.
And I've done many 7, 8 to 9-figure transactions actually in the business, real estate,
Yeah.
crypto, technology space. So the way you carry yourself means a lot in the industry that I'm part
Yeah.
of. And I'm not saying you have to be like suit and tie all the time
Yeah.
and talk like a lawyer, but there's a level of professionalism that's required when you deal with high value items. Obviously, not to the scale that I've talked about, but even 4, 5, 6-figure cards are still, these are serious transactions, and you have these
Mm-hmm.
kids with no experience whatsoever in the workforce, or dealing with anything that's of value outside of Pokemon cards and maybe some sneakers, that you have to constantly deal with people that don't have any professionalism and standard. And I'm not calling anybody a scammer, but sometimes it's being unprofessional, losing packages, not knowing how to handle these situations are you're pretty much just as bad as a scammer in my books,
Yeah.
because you have the responsibility to act like um, one to you have the responsibility to complete your side of the bargain, right?
Mm-hmm.
If you're a seller, it doesn't matter what happens in your life. It really is not relevant to the other party when they have already paid you. I
Yeah.
fulfilled my end of the bargain by paying you, right, promptly, and
Mm-hmm.
and in the way that we've negotiated. Like, it's your
Mm-hmm.
responsibility to ship the card in a secure manner, and well, within a reasonable time frame. So what
Yeah.
that situation happened was, obviously for 13 days I was not able to get the guy to ship the card, and every day was a different excuse. I found a job, I have to work until 3, and then after 3 I have to hit the gym, so I have to hit the gym every day this week, I'll ship it next week, that type of
Yeah.
thing. So if you've been following me longer, you see I give a lot of props to young entrepreneurs and young sellers, quite a bit. Like, I try and highlight anybody that's in their early 20s or even earlier, when they do something crazy. I really love supporting young entrepreneurs, which is why I am an angel investor, and I like to invest in companies um, that are built by the next generation of entrepreneurs. And
Yeah.
so it really hurts me to put the guy on blast on Instagram, but I felt like I had to do it because I lost the confidence in his ability
Mm-hmm.
to execute his end of the deal without any type of public intervention. So I had to do it, and the moment I did it, he shipped out the card. So it ended up working out. I still
Yeah.
think if I didn't post that series of stories, I probably still don't have the card even now.
Yeah.
So that's the level of unprofessionalism that I talk about. And again, I don't think this guy's a scammer or anything because he's completed multiple deals in the past, but you can't be carrying yourself like this in any other industry and be given a second or third or fourth chance.
Yeah.
But it's only kind of in Pokemon where we deal with a lot of kids that are your age, a bit older than you, that treat this like it's a joke, right? This is,
Mm-hmm.
even though it's a hobby for you or it's a hobby for me, you still have to maintain a level of professionalism when you're dealing with, you know, thousands or tens or hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of cards. Even if it's like a $50 card, if you're a
Yeah.
seller, you have to treat it like it's $1 million. I really
Yeah.
think it's this is kind of like a training arena for the young entrepreneurs of tomorrow, because I don't think Pokemon should be your final destination when it comes to entrepreneurship. You should be thinking about bigger and better things, but it's a perfect place for you to practice how to do
Mm-hmm.
business with people in the real world. And the
Yeah.
crazy thing is, these people, there's a lot of people that have done certain things like this that gets given second, third, and fourth chances, just like how I've given this guy a second chance. But you still have to learn to grow up and be an actual professional, or
Yeah.
else you're not going to make it anywhere in life. Like I said, if you can't figure out how to ship a card, you can't figure out how to tape a box, you can't figure out how to
Yeah.
drive to UPS and drop it off,
Yeah.
then
The basics.
you have no future. Like, this is something that's expected of you, and you should be able to do it.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree with that 100%. And I thought about something that, so for me, I have another job that I work at. I work at just a grocery retailer at Publix, called Publix. It's here in Nashville. And something that they're very, very, I guess, strict on, but they have a very strict like code of policy. And they're very, they have a very high sense of professionalism, which by me working there, I kind of adopted into all my other stuff that I do. So bringing that sense of professionalism here, I tried to bring that to the space, like where, at least obviously I'm not like a huge seller, but what I'm doing now is, just provide the premier quality service for all the customers. Always like check up on them, like once the card is shipped, like, hey, your card has been shipped. If there's anything else you need, just let me know. Like, just kind of like the small things that add up to like a good customer experience. So hopefully, maybe if they want to buy something again, cool, that's great. They already have contact with me directly. They can talk to me about it if they want a card, or if they're looking for a card. I remember I sold a card to Japan that I didn't even really know I knew what the card was, but it wasn't really anything special to me. But to this Japanese guy, it was very special to him because they didn't print that card in Japan. So I was like, oh, okay, would you like another one of those cards? And he's like, oh yeah, sure. If you ever stumble across one, just reach back to me and we'll do a transaction. I was like, okay, cool. That's great. So kind of building those connections kind of just helps you obviously grow, but it just gives you a sense of confidence in a way as well, and just helps you just perform your business perform better. I agree a lot with what you said about just bringing a professional sense to, especially and I like how you said it's like a training arena, right? Like, this is, for some people it's a hobby, and when they transition to a business, they still treat it like a hobby when they should be treating it like a business.
Mm-hmm.
So that's really good. I agree with that a lot. That's awesome. I saw that you guys did Van City, I don't really, what was you guys did a convention in Vancouver.
Yeah, so we're part of the TCG. We're like the TCG partners for the Van City Card Show, and
Okay.
yeah, Van City is short for Vancouver City. So a
Yeah.
lot of people don't know it. They think Van City is just my wife's name, but
Oh, yeah.
she's Van City CJ or Van City Pokemon for that, because we're Pokemon people in Vancouver, and we're one of the first people in Vancouver to really like get into Pokemon and kind of like put our city on the map. So a few of my friends in the sports card space actually started the Van City Card Show, and they're like, hey, we really need your help to bring the Pokemon people in. So we're like, I hate flying to car shows because I have like a phobia for planes. So I'm like, let's bring all the people over to us. So we put together the show. I invited a lot of my big TCG friends, like Gentleman Pokemon Yashi, who lives in Nashville. You should know who he is. He's one of the legends in the hobby.
Who did you say?
And
What was his
content
name?
creators. Gentleman Pokemon.
Gentleman Pokemon.
He's one of the real OGs. He's actually the only Pokemon collector in the PSA Collectors Hall of Fame.
Oh,
He was the first person to complete every WotC Hollow in a PSA 10. And when I say every WotC Hollow, it's not just first at base, Shadowless, base at first at jungle. It's like first at thick, first at thin, first at gray stamp, like every single card. Every single hollow in a PSA 10, and he was the first person to complete that set. He's one of the real OGs and top collectors in the space. I put him in the same stratosphere as guys like King Pokemon Gary. He's probably still number one because he's a good friend of ours. He's like the nicest friend ever, nicest person ever, and he's the reason why this hobby still exists, right? And then you got guys like Gem and Pokemon. You got guys like Rusty, all those guys that are like up there, the OGs, the people that have been in this hobby for decades that kept it going. And then there's like guys like me that kind of want to like continue to move forward with it, but I'll never put myself in the same category as those guys because they've been around for way longer and they've accomplished things that's impossible to accomplish nowadays. So yeah, you got guys like that. I brought them. I brought some of my favorite content creators in space like Shiv, Caleb, Andy, and we actually did a kind of like a live podcast or live panel discussion on the digital movement and collectibles. Like I said, I used to run a marketing company, so we talked about how the digital marketing aspect can bring so much value to businesses in the CCG space, and how digital marketing and content is actually underrated and undervalued right now. So yeah, we tried our best to bring value to our guests and get people to fly into Vancouver from all over North America to attend the Vent City Car Show, and hopefully the second one will be bigger and better. The first one was a tremendous success. So yeah, hopefully the second one is even bigger.
Yeah, it's kind of that same situation in Nashville right now, where I talked to we have a card show that it's called the National for Nashville, and it's kind of like primarily sports cards, but obviously there's other TCG focus in it as well. And that's kind of when I first went out, and it was my first convention, and I went out and I did interviews for people, and that's how I met one of my good friends now, Abe, who I did the first episode of this podcast with. In that podcast, we obviously talked about how we want like Nashville to be a bigger, like big city, like kind of how you said, put Vancouver on the map, which I actually have some family in Vancouver who they're Magic people. They do Magic the Gathering. I don't think they do Pokemon. But yeah, so that kind of in that same situation where we're trying to put Nashville on the map, and we're actually doing a convention in May with with them. But it's focused heavily on Pokemon. That's really cool.
You should get Gem Pokemon there then. Like I said, he's one of the top 5 people in the entire space, and he lives in Nashville. So he's been trying to get me down there for some Nashville chicken. He's been saying Nashville chicken's really good, but I think Vancouver chicken's even better. So
really, I didn't know that was a thing. Is it Vancouver hot chicken?
No, it's like there's like a fried chicken restaurant over here that makes the best chicken burgers in the world, in my opinion. But obviously Zach has other ideas, but I should connect you with him because he lives in Nashville. So
cool.
Having him at the show is definitely a big deal for if
I would
you
love
want
that.
to create a Pokemon show.
Cool, that's awesome. Appreciate that. I would love that. Is it a yearly thing? Are you guys going to do yearly or bi-yearly or just?
Yeah, cool. Yearly, annually. Cool. I think. Yeah, it's most likely going to be sometime in the fall this year.
Cool.
So
cool.
Yeah.
Is that the favorite convention you've been a part of, or is that or are there other conventions that are really like highlights for you?
So I don't really travel for cards because I'm really busy managing my other companies.
Yeah.
So it's hasn't really been like a priority for us to go to a bunch of shows, and also because um of our online presence. Like
Hmm.
we do probably 200K a month just on Instagram alone. So we don't really
Yeah.
need to go to shows. We go to shows to buy stuff.
Hmm.
So we don't go to a ton of shows, but the Van City
Hmm.
Car Show is definitely the best local one that we've been to and like partially hosted. But we also had some really great memories at the LA Collecticon earlier this year.
Cool.
That
Yeah.
was like the first card show we went to in 3 years.
Hmm.
And obviously we reconnected with guys like Zach and a lot of the Pokemon people down there. And we went down to Burbank as well in LA. Again, like I'm more in my mindset is beyond like buying and selling cars. That's only a very
Yeah.
small part of my business. I'm an investor at heart, so I'm trying to build equity
Hmm.
instead of just like making short-term profit plays. And like Tag, for example, I don't know if you've heard of Tag, but Tag is
Hmm.
this new disruptive machine grading company that will take over the grading world, in my opinion. And Tag is down in LA, and so is Slab Mags. Have you heard of Slab Mags?
Yes, I think I saw that on one of your thing. You guys did a little thing with them. Yeah.
Exactly. So there are UV protected cases that we
Yeah.
invested in this company as well. And
That's super
Slime
cool.
Mags is one of the companies I feel like is going to make a lot of noise in the space that's beyond
Yeah.
protective cases. So we went down to Burbank because both Tag and
Hmm.
Slime Mags was down there. And yeah, so those are the conventions I can think of. Well, actually, the best memory that I have at a Pokemon show is actually back in 2021 at the Steve Aoki King Pokemon
Hmm.
Save the World event.
Oh,
I
that's
don't
awesome.
know if you heard about that because that was 3.5 years ago, so you probably wasn't in the
Hmm.
hobby back then. Um, but that was like probably our favorite time in the hobby because that was when CJ and I just had the shop for a year, and then we met all of our friends, like Zach, Shiv, Pokesun, my
Hmm.
podcast co-host, great person, like
Yeah.
absolute gem of a person. You should interview
Yeah.
her as well.
Gotcha.
And we met Steve Aoki at the place too. We actually
Hmm.
reconnected with Steve Aoki recently.
Cool.
And when he was here in Vancouver, we ripped a bunch of packs with him on stream backstage. It was, I don't know if you've seen that. Um, yeah, do you know who he
That's
is?
it. Yeah, I know. I know. King is Stevie Oki, the guy with long hair.
Yeah, yeah,
Does he
yeah.
have
So
long hair and a beard? Yeah. Okay. Yeah. I
he's a
think. I think
very
so.
he's a very one of the biggest musical acts
Hmm.
in the space, and also a huge collector. So he and Gary hosted Pokemon Saves the World, and we had so much fun and met so many people, and a lot of them became like our lifelong friends. So it's all about building the memories. I remember we ripped 4 heavy Skyridge packs that we bought for like I don't know how much, like 5 or 6K, I think.
Okay.
And we ripped 4 of them, and one of them happened to contain the Skyward Umbreon Hollow. And we got it graded tag 10. We had Steve Aoki sign it recently when he was here, so it kind of like
Nice.
went full circle.
That's
So
cool.
to us, like I never really think about a show where it's like, oh, this show like we made a lot of money or
Hmm.
bought a lot of cards. I always think about the memories that we created.
Yeah.
So it's probably the Aoki Foundation Pokemon Saves the World event is number
Hmm.
one, and then number two is probably like Man City Car Shows. We've got all the friends, Zach and
Hmm.
all those guys here, and then probably the Burbank or LA Collecticon shortly after.
Hmm. That's awesome. And you talked about memories. What is your favorite memory in the TCG? Obviously, I know you've been doing this since you were very little. I've been doing this since I was 8, but didn't really get serious about it until like 20. Like obviously selling this year, but like competitive, like trading card I got in like 2019. But obviously, you've been doing this for a long time. So what has been? I'm sure you've had lots of memories, but what is like by far one of your favorite memories that you've had?
So one of my favorite memories I just mentioned is the Pokemon Saves the World event in
Yes. Yes.
2021. Probably my favorite was when my wife and I got back into it. I think this was back in 2019 as well. We ripped a bunch of Hidden Fates when Hidden Fates came out, and then
Yeah.
the first right before that, actually the first night of opening, I tried to get my wife to start opening stuff with me. Was we opened a bunch of X5 Evolutions, and
Nice. Yeah.
I mean, at the time, we're not ripping for value, like it's
Yeah.
just none of that stuff was that expensive. But I was like, I really wanted to pull the base set Charizard, like first edition Charizard. It's like pretty expensive, but I was like, we can buy a bunch of evolutions packs and pull the base set artwork, Charizard artwork, right? So she sat down, not knowing what's happening and not knowing how hard it is to pull some of the big cards.
Yeah.
And we ripped, I believe, 150 XO evolutions packs, and then we pulled 9 evolutions holo Charizards in one night.
Wow.
So 9 of them. So that was crazy. I remember she was like screaming and running back and forth. And if you've ever been in a relationship, you're 16, probably a little bit too young for that, especially when you get into a long-term committed relationship like marriage, like myself. It's really tough to find a common interest and hobby with your significant other. It's very lucky if you have one, right? So
Yeah.
that was the moment I realized that, hey, we found our passion in this. And I saw how happy she was. She was like crying happy tears when she was pulling Charizard after Charizard. And for a
Yeah.
period of time, the community called her the Mother of Dragons because she kept pulling Charizard after Charizard.
Yeah.
So it was that was probably my favorite time in the hobby when we
That's
first
super
got into it. And that was like I mentioned, we're not thinking value, we're not thinking, hey, like this card is worth this much. We went to like all kinds of flea markets, all kinds of garage sales. I think it's a lot tougher to find now because everybody knows that it's like really expensive. But back in the day when nobody had any clue they were expensive, we found all kinds of like nice cards at all kinds of garage sales and flea markets. And my wife and I would just go for the hunt, and it was just so fun. Right before the boom, or right at the beginning of the boom.
Yeah.
5 years ago or so.
That's awesome. That's cool. And obviously I'm not in a relationship, and I'm definitely, hopefully, I hope that I'm far away from a committed relationship because I'm still trying to build some stuff up. But I do have, me and my brother are in this hobby together. So I do get that feeling where you have someone that you're close with, obviously family who enjoy the same hobby. So that's what we'll do, like on weekends, primarily Saturdays because I usually work Sundays. But we'll just play rounds and rounds of Pokemon because that's what we like. We're like, we have that competitive sense, so we're always just like having fun building the new decks and doing that. So I do get that, and it's those little memories. That's great. But like 9 Charizards, that's crazy. We probably opened like probably not that many evolutions packs. So we've opened a couple back when it was that when we did. Our luck is horrible, but that's awesome. That's really, really cool.
Yeah. CJ often tells people that Pokemon chose her, and it wasn't the other way around, because if we sat down and ripped like a bunch of evolutions and pulled absolutely nothing, like she wouldn't have gotten into it. The reason why she was so like deep into Pokemon is because that first night she was chosen by the Pokemon gods, by Arceus. And blessed us with the 9 Charizards that we pulled from the X5 Evolution packs, and now here we are. If it wasn't for that night, we wouldn't be where we are right now.
That's awesome. Do you have any of those Charizards left, or do you?
Yeah, I do. Of course. One sec. I still have the best one from. We kept most of the Charizards we pulled on that night. I think we sold 1 or 2. But on that first night, we kept most of them, and this one is the strongest out of all of them. And if you've seen XO Evolutions, you know how hard it is to grade these cards. Most of them have crazy print lines and whitening everywhere. So this card got graded a tag 10 recently. We had it in our collection for a long time. And we'll never sell it. This is one of the cards that I mentioned. Like, you can legitimately offer me $1 million for this right now, and I would not accept it. I wouldn't even think about it. That's how much our collection means to us. And every single one of these cards has a special memory that's attached to it, and that's why they're so special beyond the monetary value that it represents.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's something I love about Pokemon is obviously there's like those cards, but there's like normal cards, but then there's cards like that which have that story behind them, which are like, I said this story on another episode, but there was a guy that I follow, and he went to he loves collecting EX Rocket, and he went to the Latin American International Championships about like a year ago, I think, and he had been looking for like a Rockets Mewtwo EX, and he could not find one. Like he searched for, like he obviously saw some stuff on eBay, but it wasn't like anything crazy. But then he ended up going and he went to like a flea market type thing, like garage sale, in San Paulo, and he found one, and he was like, "Oh my goodness, that's crazy!" And he bought it, and obviously took it back and showed everyone. But it's like those stories that the journey they had to go to get that card. So that's what makes really the hobby. It's like the highlights of the hobby that makes it super special and really cool.
Yeah.
But that's awesome that you still got that.
Yeah, I have everything that means something to me. Since the beginning of my Pokemon journey. Yeah. Remember that Pikachu that I showed you a picture of? Like 7-year-old.
Yeah.
Yeah, I still have it. I still have it. I'm a very sentimental person.
No, yeah, I get it.
So, as you can
That's
see,
sick.
this is like 2000 or something.
Mm-hmm.
And there's that little red mouse.
Yeah.
Same guy is right here.
That's awesome. That's so cool.
So I have everything, like everything that means something to me. Since I started collecting Pokemon 25, 26 years ago.
That's really cool.
Yeah.
That mouse is I bet has seen a lot. How many times have you moved with that mouse?
I don't know, like maybe 17 times, a lot. I moved around. I grew up in California, actually. And then I moved back to China for 2 years and moved to Vancouver in 2007. And I've stayed here ever since. I moved multiple, like probably like 7 times in the last 20 years because I invest in a lot of properties. We buy and sell properties. I've moved around. And anytime I moved, I have to make sure all my Pokemon stuff stays with me, so I can have a piece of. I see every single one of these guys as like a part of me, right?
Yeah.
So, this is where the passion lies, and which is why I see myself differently compared to a lot of the other people in the space, whether they're collecting or selling or both. There's not a lot of people that love Pokemon as much as I do.
Yeah, no, I get it. It's part of your DNA. It's in you. It's part of your upbringing and everything. That's really cool. I think I have some plushies from when I started playing. I might have to bring them up here one time and put them on the shelf. But that's super cool. So we're kind of speaking about all this. My next question would be for you. Obviously you have a lot of high end cards, but what was that? Was there a card that in like either you bought or that you sold? I guess this kind of is not. I guess you can tell you've kind of had it your whole life, but that when going back in, that it was like for me, it was like I called it my first Charizard. Like I bought like an X and Y Evolutions Charizard, and it was like that card for me that I was like, oh wow, like I'm really in this. Like like this is actually like part of me. This is like something that I'm like serious about, and that I'm ready to go on that journey. Did you ever have like a card that maybe came back around to you or something that you got that was really like that card?
So, my wife actually made a video about this, and this is our first edition Charizard ever.
Awesome.
We there's actually 2 cards like that. That you mentioned, like the first 2 like high value cards that we've purchased ever since we got back into the hobby 5-6 years ago. This is one of them. I'm a huge Suicune collector. I don't know if you've seen.
I saw your post. Yes.
And stuff, right? So that's my favorite Pokemon growing up. Crystal version is my favorite game. So the first big card that I acquired after I got back into the hobby is actually a PSA 10 Gold Star Suicune.
That's awesome.
And that card I actually cracked and graded with tag and got a tag 10. I recently gifted that card to Steve Aoki as I wanted to show him the tag slabs and wanted to give him something because he was in Vancouver, and I wanted to thank him for throwing that crazy event 3 years ago and got us back into the hobby with so many different friends. So I actually recently gifted that card to him. That was a special card to me, and I know that this is a collector that enjoys Gold Stars, and he's not gonna sell it or anything. So I gave that
You
card
keep
away
it.
to him. But this card is the first edition Charizard that my wife and I ever got.
That's
So
awesome.
I believe this is I think 2020, and we bought this card in 2020 and had him for like a few years, and then I remember we started buying a bunch of really high grade first edition Charizard. So we had like a bunch of 9s and 10s, and this is like one of the cards that somebody wanted. So we actually sold this, and wait, let me think. When was this? This was like last year or something. But yeah, we bought a lot of higher graded
Mhm.
cards. And at the time, we had like 6 or 7 first edition Charizards, and this was like the
Yeah.
lowest grade one that we had. And at the time, it didn't really hit us, but we sold it.
Wow.
And unfortunately, that was like the worst decision we could
Mhm.
have made, because we were like missing it so much. And I remember we chased down the ownership chain, and there's like it changed hands 4 times.
Wow.
And we recently found it 4 months ago, I think 3-4 months ago, and we bought it back. And there's a video on my wife's channel
Yeah.
account, vancity.cj. You can look, it's pinned at the top of the reels.
Mhm.
And she was literally, the moment she got the card, she was crying. And
Wow.
because this means so much to us, it stayed with us at the very beginning, and we made a
Mhm.
mistake by selling it. I'm sure every collector has a story of like that one card you regretted selling, and
Yeah.
this is that card for us. And we got him back, and this is another one of these cards where you can literally give me $1 million in cash right now and I wouldn't sell it, because it means so much to us, being our first edition Charizard. Obviously, we had many after.
Yeah.
This one is probably one of the cleanest first edition Charizards in the world. But even this
Crazy.
one can't compare to this one when it
Yeah.
comes to what it means to us. And yeah, so I would say those are the 2 cards. One of them I recently gave away to Steve Aoki
Yeah.
to thank him, and this one is the other one that we chased back down.
Cool. That's awesome, and I'm happy. I'm glad that you were able to find that card again, and it wasn't just like a story where you kind of where you sold it and then you never saw it again.
Yeah.
How did he find it? Like, how does there you? So obviously, you probably what you talked to the seller, and then the seller told you that you, or the buyer, and the buyer told you they sold it to someone
Yeah.
else, or how?
So it was actually being waffled in a Facebook group.
Oh.
So the thing is, with the waffles, you don't know like where it goes.
Mhm.
So um you don't know if they want to sell it or not. But I found the listing of someone that's hosting a waffle. I checked the cert number. I was like, damn, I was like, this is the exact card that I have.
Yeah.
So I remember I bought a bunch of spots. It's like, hey, what if we just win it back, right? Like maybe he wants to fly
Mhm.
back to us. And obviously that didn't happen. So I chased down the person that was hosting it. I was like, hey, you don't understand how much this means to me. I will pay full market price plus like 10-20%, whatever it takes. I need it back. So we got connected with the person that wanted it, and he's like, I want to keep it or sell it. I was like, hey, like I'm your guy. Like you gotta sell it to me. So I paid, I believe, like I don't know what percentage over what he would have gotten from other people.
Mhm.
And I obviously told him the story, showed him the pictures and the videos of us having the card 4 or 5 years ago, and he was like, "Wow, this is crazy. Okay, I'll sell it to you." So
Yeah.
thanks to him, we have this guy back in our possession. But
That's
it was
awesome.
very lucky to
Yeah.
see him in that wall.
That's awesome. So this is kind of a different thing, and I just thought about this right now. So you obviously you're working with tag
Yeah.
grading, or you say they're really good. How is their grading product? Like this is just me because I am not I haven't obviously had I don't have any graded cards in my collection, and and I want to. There's some cards that I would like to send to grade, and obviously PSA is the big one. But how are they compared to like a PSA, or how you said they're new, you think they're going to take over the space. So if you would mind
Yeah.
explaining like how are they
So
compared to the other different grading systems?
okay, so my investment philosophy when it comes to the companies in the collectible spaces. I genuinely care about where the hobby is going. So I have pain points that that is pretty universally recognized, like the inconsistency in the grading. You probably don't have much experience in that space because you're still relatively young. You don't have many slabs, but I've graded with PSA, with BGS, with CGC, and obviously I have a big CGC pristine collection, but I feel the same way about these guys as I do with BGS or PSA. And is anytime you submit a card, it's graded by a person that's getting paid, like, I don't know, $20 an hour, and look at it for 33 seconds. So that card could be a 10, a 9, an 8, or a pristine 10 on any given day. And sometimes you have to grade them over and over again. A lot of people crack and submit until they get the grade that they want. Again, I don't think that process should be what it is, because some of these collectibles are worth 6-7 figures now, and if you value someone's opinion based on 17 seconds or 35 seconds of them looking at it, I don't know what to tell you, because that might change on any given day, right? So what tag does is eliminates the subjectivity in grading. So they have machine grading, which with PSA, or let's just use CGC for example. This card is a pristine 10, so it's even way harder to get than PSA 10s. If you crack this and send it in, it will most likely get a gem 10, which is the 10 that's below this grade, or a 9 or a 9.5. But chances are you're not going to get another pristine 10, right? It's going to be a different grade. And then obviously a different cert number, because every time you crack it, the cert will change. It'll be there's somebody looking at it. If you crack a tag slab and send it back in, not only would it get the same numerical grade either out of 100 or out of 10, you will also get the same cert number, because the fingerprint technology will recognize it as the same card that was submitted. Really? That is the level of consistency that you need from grading companies. Do you know what I mean? That is the main pain point that people have is, hey, my card is misgraded. It's undergraded. It's overgraded. But look at this. This is a random YouTuber that did this experiment. So he cracked the slab, sent it back in, and got the same numerical grade 861 and the same cert number.
That's awesome.
That is what you need. And also, like, if you get a PSA 10 or a CGC 10 or a Beckett 10, Black Label, whatever it is, you only see the number they give you. You don't actually know why the card got what it got. So with the tag cards, you can scan this QR code on your phone, right? Let me do it for you. You scan the QR code, and it will lead you to the site that has the dig report for this particular card. So you can see there's a grade 962, gem 10, number of graded 21, pop, ranking, and then you can see the surface defect transparency. You can see exactly where all of the defects are. There's a surface defect map.
That's awesome.
And if you click on the back, you see the back. You click on the front, you see the front. If you click on this defect, it will actually show you exactly where that defect is. Right? Does that make sense? And then
that's super
you
cool.
scroll down. This is the level of detail that's required nowadays when you deal with collectibles on site. Or reception's really bad, but as you can see, it shows you all of the grades, front, back, left, center. Shows you all of the defects, the surface defect maps. It'll show you every corner. You can actually make it bigger, make it smaller, so you can see if there is whitening or silvering on the corners and edges. This is the level of detail that's required for these collectibles. Why did your card get a certain grade? Well, if you don't know, you can look in this report. There's nothing for you to argue. And this is why I believe in tag so much. And again, like, I believe if it's not tag, it's some other company that utilizes the AI or machine grading technology, because it is absolutely required for us to be at that point nowadays. And when tag grows,
for that,
they're going to have remote grading pods, which means actually from a business standpoint, it puts it in a completely different revenue multiplier when it comes to valuations, because once remote grading pods are out, what that means is you can walk into a shop, you can grade your $5 card for like $5 or $10 or $15, however it is, get your card back within 5 minutes, and it will be graded without you having to ship to a grading company that's halfway across the country or halfway across the world. Get it graded at any local shop or any shopping mall where we have the remote grading pods, and that's going to change the game completely. That's why I believe in tag so much, and that is why I decided to become an investor myself and be part of this disruption of technology. And again, this is a long-term play. As an investor, some people that don't know anything about business in the space will call it, oh, Jesse and these people are doing a pump and dump. This is when I know these people are not well versed, because there is nothing more long-term and the opposite of pumping and dumping something as investing in a startup.
Yeah.
Our shares are not liquid. I can't just sell shares to you for a profit, right?
Yeah.
Because this is a private company. It's not public. I invested in this company because I believe in the long term, and I believe this company will push the hobby forward. And whenever I get paid out is whenever, if the company goes public in, I don't know, 5 to 10 years, or it gets acquired by, a larger company, years or if not decades down the line. So I'm not talking about here like, hey, we're trying to make a quick buck because this company is going to be so big. We're talking about the people that invest in this company are seeing the long-term vision and what this could do to push our hobby forward.
That's awesome. That's really cool. And like how you said, like it's that, again, that like kind of that professionalism and what's required nowadays, and how the technology is available, like it's accessible to us. So why not use it for this space? That's really cool. So yeah, I'll definitely check them out. Maybe I'll have to send some cards in or get something graded. But
the other thing that's cool about Tag is like this super clean Gentman first edition Charizard. I got quoted a $5,000 walkthrough service to grade it at PSA. Right? PSA upcharges based on the value of the card. So in order to grade this card is $5,000. In order to grade this card is probably like $500, right? It doesn't make sense. You get upcharged based on value because it's the same process regardless. So I graded this for $25 at Tag, just like this one, just like every other card. It's $25 regardless of value. Well, actually,
awesome.
it's $15 if you want to just go with the Tag X, which is the 10-point scale instead of the 1,000-point scale. So it starts at $15. You can pay $25 or maybe a little bit higher for a quicker turnaround, but nothing exceeds $100. And no matter how much your card is worth, it's always going to be the same price because the process is the same. Right?
That's awesome.
That's what we need for grading, in my opinion. The upcharges make absolutely no sense for PSA.
Yeah, that's really cool. Yeah, that's one of the weirdest things for me to figure out when I'm like sending something in or trying. I was looking at the process. I'm like, this is really confusing. But that's super cool with Tag. I'll definitely look into that if you only said it's like $15. Yeah. Cool. So what, obviously you have a big high-end collection, you have a shop, and that's, like I said before, really cool because that's something I'm looking forward to doing in the future. But what platform do you see the most success on? Like, I know you've done shows, you have your own shop. You said you do a lot on Instagram. So what areas have you, or what platforms have you seen the most success on as a seller?
For us is social media. It's Instagram pretty much exclusively. So we do like 70K at the shop. We do like probably 250K on Instagram every month. We don't really post about it that much. A lot of the stuff people come to us because, also I've talked about it in one of our podcast episodes, is to focus on a niche, and even though you don't have to just focus in that one area, but you can, that's how you build a community, that's how you build a network, that's how you get into some of the other areas. So what we're known for is obviously the Gold Star Pristine collection. We're very high-end Gold Star collectors, one of the biggest Gold Star collections in the world, I would say, that we have. So that is kind of like what we focus on. So we have a network of all the PSA 10 or CGC Pristine 10 or BGS 10 Gold Stars, and obviously it trickles down to 9s, 8s, and 7s, but high-end Gold Stars, I don't think anybody has. Well, maybe that's maybe 3 or 4 people have access to the amount of buyers and sellers like we do. So a lot of the volume goes through like high-end gold stars and obviously first edition base, just anything high-end in the English WotC space.
Mhm.
We do like six figures every month in that, mostly through Instagram and our shop and our connections. And also I've built a community of collectors that are not so much in the Pokemon space but in business through my other ventures.
Yeah.
Like I'm a huge car collector. Well, not collector, I love to drive my cars, so I wouldn't say collector, but I'm a huge car person. So in my exotic car world, there's a lot of exotic car owners that kind of know Pokemon through me, and they only buy Pokemon cards through me. So these people have millions of dollars of disposable income that they want to put through cards, but they don't want to go through other people. They want to just go through me because they trust me. They've known me for years, right? So I would say build a network and find your niche and something that you're genuinely passionate about and that you're collecting, and then and create content around it and build a name for yourself. And that's what we've been doing on Instagram. And so far we do huge volume on Instagram and the shop, because the digital marketing aspect brings people into the shop. A lot of people actually fly into Vancouver to buy stuff from us. We had a gentleman flew in from Calgary last month and bought like $65,000 or $70,000 worth of cards from us, just at the shop. So there's once you build your name on social media, on the digital platforms, people will come to you, whether it's on Instagram for an online deal or come to you physically to transact with you at your brick and mortar shop.
That's awesome. That's really cool. Yeah, building your niche, building connections. I've heard that. I've heard that, and that's definitely true, tried and true. And like, stick to your niche. It pays off is something that I like to say, especially to friends of mine that are trying to start stuff and all that type of stuff. That's really cool. And yeah, that hopefully someday maybe I'll come down to the shop. I don't have my passport, but I gotta go check that out. That's really cool.
Yeah, once you get your passport, come up to Vancouver. I'm happy to invite you over to our house and check out the shop and just hang out.
Actually, that's far. Now, kind of getting into that, what would be some tips? Obviously, you said selecting niches and all that type of stuff, but what would be some tips that you would recommend to new sellers and people who want to start possibly maybe flipping or just getting into the hobby or just starting a Pokemon?
I mentioned this in my last podcast episode too, or a couple of podcasts. So, that's to focus on quality over quantity. So there's a lot of people that talk about, hey, like I want to diversify, I want to minimize my risk, I want to buy. Let's say you have $2,000 or $5,000. Let's say you have $5,000 starting capital. You want to buy. A lot of people want to buy like $150 cards or $100 cards, and I gotta tell you, like it's almost impossible to make a living buying 100 or 1,000 cards, because selling a $200 PSA 9 Umbreon V Alt Art is infinitely harder than selling a PSA 9 Gold Star Charizard or a PSA 9 Crystal Charizard, because there's 55 listings on eBay of your $200 Umbreon V PSA 9. And for you to compete with everybody else, you have to kind of like race to the bottom, offer better prices. Because why would people buy from you, Rocco? Or from me, Jesse? Like, nobody would care to buy from me if somebody else has it listed on eBay for slightly cheaper. And when there's 250 of those cards out there, it's, well, I mean, in the pop report, there's like 20,000 of those cards out there. But like, let's say there's 200 cards listed at all times. Why would they come to you, right? It's really hard for you to sell that card. It's a lot harder to sell that card than the PSA 9 Gold Star Charizard, because there's only 3 to 5 at most on the market at all times. Sometimes it's 1 or 2, right? And anybody that's 90s kid that wanted that card as a kid and they want to buy it, they have to buy from me.
Yeah.
Does that make sense? Once you get the word out there, I have a PSA 9 Gold Star Rayquaza or PSA 9 Crystal Charizard or PSA 9 Gold Star Charizard out there. You know, those cards are maybe 4,000 or 5,000, might be 10,000, 15,000. It's so much easier to sell those than it is to sell $100, $200 cards.
Mhm.
Does that make sense to you? And you're
Yeah.
like, oh, I'm diversifying my portfolio, I'm minimizing risk. But no, all of those modern cards that you buy, they go up and go down kind of together. And like
Mhm.
I said, if you can't sell them all before they go down in the cycle, because the market is cyclical, you're
Mhm.
going to lose money on your 200 will lose money on your lot of $100 or $200 cards, right?
Yeah.
And then you have to fire sell them online in auction, lose 10-15% on auction fees, lose money on the shipping, and then you're going to lose money by trying to beat the lowest price
Mhm.
possible. So instead
Mhm.
of focusing on quantity, it's probably
Focus on
better for
quality.
you to find the best deal possible on a higher end card and then
Mhm.
sell that for a profit, or an undergraded high end card. That is the number one revenue generator or profit generator for small time collectors or sellers. Is to find that PSA 7, 8, 9 card that could be regraded for a grade higher, whether it's in the same company or with a different company like BGS or CGC. And like I
Mhm.
said, because Tag is not the number one company yet, it's PSA, BGS, CGC, and then Tag. There's lots of opportunities out there that you can find if you have a good eye to find undergraded high end cards, right?
Yeah.
Find a card that's a PSA 8 that's supposed to be a 9, or a 9 that's supposed to be a 10
Mhm.
for a slight discount in value, regrade it into its deserved grade, and then sell it for a profit. That is a lot better than selling 200 cards that are in the lower value tier, because, like
Mhm.
I said, you're not going to be able to compete with the hundreds of other sellers out there that's selling
Yeah.
the same card. Does that
That's
make
true. Yeah.
sense?
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
100%. That's very true. And that's yeah, that's really cool. Finding those strategies out. It kind of reminds me of have you I assume have you heard of like the blue ocean strategy?
Blue ocean strategy.
Yeah.
I don't think so. Explain.
Okay. So the blue ocean strategy, it's based off a book. I don't remember who wrote it. But it's based off a book
Oh,
called The
no, no.
Blue
Actually, no.
Ocean.
I have heard about it. Yeah.
Okay. Okay,
Yeah,
yeah.
no, no. I
So
actually learned it in in business school.
find your blue ocean is kind of what you're saying and what I'm feeling like
Exactly.
find your market.
Well, I would say not necessarily find your blue ocean, but um find undervalued items.
Mhm.
Like I said, when it comes to slab sales, the value is represented by the grade that is given to it by a grader. So finding undervalued products that's higher quality and higher value compared to a bunch of products that you're trying to move at a lower end price, because like I said, it's a lot easier, a lot quicker to make five that flip between you buy a car for $5,000, sell it for $6,500. It's a lot
Mhm.
easier to do that than to sell your lot of $5,100 cards for
Yeah.
15-20% profit, because then you still have to take into consideration the seller fees and shipping that you
Shipping, yeah.
have to take care of for every single one of those cards. And
Yeah.
for the $5,000 to $6,500 cards, you can just sell it on Instagram,
Mhm.
or to your local show, or to somebody on Facebook Marketplace for next to no fees.
Yeah.
Right? Does that make sense?
Yeah, so it does make sense. Thank you. I'll definitely
Yeah.
incorporate it. Now I gotta do some hunting.
Yeah.
I gotta find some
You gotta
undervalued
train your eye
cards.
first, because you
Yeah.
don't have experience buying a lot of graded cards. So you gotta
Mhm.
understand like what's an 8 and what's a 9 and what's a
Yeah.
10. So
Yeah.
you gotta
I
train
will
first before
yeah.
you get into the market and start
Yeah.
finding deals.
I'll work on that. I'm kind of in the stage right now where I'm kind of just liquidating what I've had and just getting that kind of startup capital. I have a little bit of startup capital, but kind of just building up what I've had and just starting to reinvest that back into the business so that I can just, start doing that type start
Yeah, you can start as
obviously
little as
doing
$500 to
yeah.
$1,000. Like
Yeah.
worst case scenario, you talk to your family members and pull together $500 or $1,000, and you
Hmm.
can actually pay them back in the span of like 3 to 4 months pretty easily
Yeah.
if you live at home. Because
Yeah.
like you have the distinct advantage that none of us have. Because
Hmm.
right now you're still going to school, you're still living at home, you don't have to pay rent, you don't have to pay for your kids, you don't have to pay for
Yeah.
anything, right? Like it's the
Yeah.
easiest time to
Yeah.
start a business and grow and build it. So when you do have bills to pay, you already have that foundation
Yeah.
built over the last
Cool.
3, 4, 5 years.
To find those cards, like you recommend just like eBay or Facebook Marketplace or maybe Facebook groups. I'm in some Facebook groups, but just
Everywhere.
kind
So
of
I
finding
personally
that.
don't have that much time to look for cards. The good
Hmm.
thing is I've built a reputation as a really good buyer, and what that means
Hmm.
is I buy at very high, well, not very high percentages, but higher percentages than our competitors.
Yeah.
Because a lot of them, if it's for my personal collection, I'll pay you 100% comps. Like I don't care, right?
Hmm.
So I pay good. I've established a reputation as a good buyer, as a big person that spends a lot of money. So I have literally everybody just sending me stuff. So I don't really have to look for stuff that hard. But
Hmm.
before you get to that point, I would say just go to shows.
Yeah.
Looking on eBay and Facebook Marketplace and Instagram, just looking at the picture, sometimes it's hard to tell on the condition. So when we do go to shows, we don't set up at a lot of shows, but we do go to like most of the local shows where we look at every card and see if this card's undergraded, overgraded, and just go strictly for buying. We don't need to sell anything, but I buy
Yeah.
a lot at shows, like at least 5 or 6 figures at every show that I go to.
That's good.
So outside of doing that, mostly comes from the stuff that people send to me. I've built the reputation that anytime a 5 or 6 figure card comes onto the market, it usually gets sent to me in the first like 3 to 4 hours.
Okay. That's
So I
awesome.
have like first or second or third dibs on a lot of stuff, and that's part of building the content strategy, building a presence online where people can recognize you and they want to send you stuff first, because sometimes being first is better than being better or wealthier or having a bigger bankroll, because you get to get first dibs on cards that other people don't have access to.
Yeah. That's awesome. That's really
Yeah.
cool. I will. Yeah, that's really cool. I will start
Yeah.
looking
So,
into
but
those
like
things.
I said, it's probably not as applicable as a young person
Hmm.
before they built their presence and bankroll. So I would say for a young person, go to as many shows as you possibly can and try and get deals and try and find cards that are undergraded.
Yeah.
Because I feel like that's way better than looking at some pictures online. Sometimes it could be deceiving under different lighting angles. You might not be able to see some of the damage or defects that you would be able to see in real life. So go to as many shows and build as many connections as possible
Yeah.
when you're just starting out.
Would you apply that same strategy for maybe like ungraded cards? Like
Yeah,
if you see
it's
like a
even more important to see the ungraded cards in person,
yeah.
because there's so many different ways that I can show you a seller can hide the defects. Let's say there's a bunch of hollow scratches. They'll just hit the angle at like a certain angle where you don't see the scratches. Or if there's like significant whitening in the back, they can just like hold it with their fingers. It's like, oh, it's like it's not here, it's no whitening, right?
Yeah.
Like there's so many different ways that people can deceive you by taking different angles for videos and photos. So for ungraded cards, it's even more important to go and see it at different shows, see it in person, or actually go to like we mentioned, to some garage sales, or posting maybe some Facebook ads. That's actually pretty effective, spending like $10, $15, $20 on some Facebook ads for people to sell you. You have lots of parents that found random collections in their attics that they want to sell. So if they see that Facebook ad, not Instagram, because parents don't go on Instagram. If they see that Facebook ad, because they go on Facebook, they might come to you with a mountain of treasure that other people wouldn't get access to, because these guys don't know anything about shows or social media. They saw your ad, they call you, you might get lucky and buy out a very valuable collection.
So like starting a page and then like sending out ads for that, or just like starting a Facebook
You don't
ad.
even need to start a page. You can just like basically find a graphic designer on Fiverr or Upwork, design a poster, be like, we buy your Pokemon cards, right? And then run that as an ad. Put your just put your number on there, or number and email. That's what like older folks care about. They don't care about your Instagram or Facebook page. Make a poster, just a visual. Or you can make it yourself on Canva. It's really easy. Or you can spend $30 finding someone on Upwork to make you that digital poster, and then just run some ads on it. Have a $50 budget or something. Run it for 5 days, and usually have some bites. Usually have people that will call you and send you pictures of what they have, and then you meet them in person and make them an offer.
Yeah. Sorry, I'm writing that down.
Yeah.
I do this obviously for content, but also to learn. So I will Facebook ad. I will put that there. All right, cool. You kind of mentioned this before, and talking about market cycles, and obviously like the return of like the release of Surging Sparks and all this stuff. I'm sure you've heard all this stuff, but it's been said that we're probably in a big Pokemon bubble right now, or it's a kind of a Pokemon bull run. How do you view that? Do you think that we are, or like how do you see this? If we are in a Pokemon bubble, how do you see this, and how do you possibly see how this might be in the future?
So I wouldn't be so quick to call it a bubble, because there's a lot of different prerequisites of something that could be considered a bubble. We are in a bull run, in a bull cycle, where the market is it feels like it's going to go nowhere but up in the short term. But like I said, it's a cyclical market. That's not going to happen. You will go through these cycles where it goes up, and very soon it will come back down. But the good thing about Pokemon is it is the number one IP in the history. So the market will look like this, and then it will look like this, and then it will look like this. But if you draw a line through the average, it will consistently go up. Just not at the rate that you think it will in a bull market, and not down at the rate you think it will go. It's like every time it goes up, everyone's like, it's going to the moon. It's never going to come back down. Moonbound's going to be $50,000. And every time it goes down, it's like, it's over. Nobody wants Pokemon. Yeah. It's over. Like, we went through that in 2020 to 21 when it goes up, and then we went through that in 22 and 23 when it went down. Everyone is like, man, this stuff will be worthless in 5 years. Nobody cares about it anymore. It's gone. Boom, over. There will always be another catalyst in 5 years that pushes the hobby back up. Like right now, we had the TCG Pocket bringing in tens of millions of users, people that never collected TCG are back into here. 151, where it's brought so many collectors that are in their 30s back into the hobby. 151 is a driving force. And then obviously in 2020 and 21, you have like a Black Swan event where everything came into one place. You have this pandemic where everyone's locked at home and got nothing to do. You have the government stimulus checks where people had excess income and everybody put it into the very things that reminded them of how life was like outside of the pandemic, and everyone put it into collectibles. And again, like, things like this will happen over and over again. So it's really important to keep a level-headed mindset when it comes to this. And one of the things I mentioned in our previous podcast is, how do you fight FOMO? Is you see a product, you're feeling the effects of FOMO. I really want to buy that product. But how do you know if you should buy that product or not? And that's, did you want it when it was cheap? 151, for example, I saw this Reddit comment that was like, that really rubbed me the wrong way. The guy's like, victim's mentality at 100%. He's like, man, I'm just sitting around thinking if I will ever be able to afford a 151. I'm just a regular person trying to open some 151. Now they're $12 a pack. That ship has sailed for me. I'm just going to sit here and I will never get to open and experience 151. I was like, bro, it was $5 a pack 3 weeks ago.
Yeah.
And this was like a month ago, right? So maybe now it's like 2 months ago. It's like, you had the opportunity to open 151 at $4 or $5 a pack for more than a year. You're sitting around telling me that you couldn't afford $4 a pack? You're 16 years old. You have $4 to rub together to buy a pack, right? That person doesn't want 151 as much as his mind tricked him into thinking he does.
You did,
right? So if you didn't want it when it was cheap, you didn't really want it. Don't buy it then. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Because every single one of these cards or packs was affordable at some point. Especially these modern stuff. Everything that comes out in the modern era is like $4 a pack. And anyone can afford $4 a pack. It was $3 a pack when I was 6, like 26 years ago.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. It's only $4 a pack now. You can't tell me you can't afford Pokemon cards. You can't be sitting here complaining about, 151. I will never have the privilege of opening this great set. You didn't think it was that great 3 weeks ago. What makes it so great now? Just because it's more expensive? right? That's how you fight FOMO. Think about it. When you could afford it, did you want to buy it or did you buy any? If the answer is no, then don't buy it. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, that makes
And
perfect sense.
the other thing I want to talk about, that's the difference between this bull run than the 2020 and 21 bull run, is this feels a lot more organic than that one. So a lot of the things that I talked about, like 151, bring a lot of people back in. Obviously, you're talking about the crypto bull run, but this bull run started kind of like before crypto went crazy and the election, all kinds of different things. It didn't have like the pandemic. It didn't have the stimulus checks. It didn't have Logan Paul and all the celebrities rushing in to kind of like make that bull run so significant and unique. Because this one, it felt a lot more organic. We experienced a lot of organic growth in the last 2 years in the hobby. And I can tell you this because we have a shop, and every Pokemon shop in our area has expanded in the last 6 months. When I say expanded, and that's moved to a bigger location. It's not just us. Everybody did. Long before this boom even happened. So there's a lot of organic growth of people coming back into the hobby or coming into the hobby for the first time. So I'm not saying this bull run will last forever because, like I said, there will be a correction and a downturn at some point. But it is fundamentally different from what we experienced during the beginning of the pandemic. And I do believe this bull run will be relatively extended due to the upcoming 30th anniversary a year from now. So late 2025 and early 2026 is when the 30th anniversary celebrations will begin. And I suspect that will be a further catalyst to move the hobby even more forward and even higher when it comes to the amount of hype and the people that are in it. So I would say this bull run might be longer than all the other ones that we've experienced. There might be some like valleys and obviously peaks, but I believe 2026 in the first 2 quarters, 2026 is where you want to take advantage as a collector and seller and try and sell your products and your inventory, because that will be the peak of its market. And I do believe there will be a steep correction towards the second half of 2026. That is my prediction. And obviously I could be wrong. I'm not a financial advisor, but from my experience, being in the hobby through multiple bull runs and peaks and valleys, I believe that's where it's going to go, because 2025 is going to be very strong with the push that we have at the end of 2024, the insane crypto bull run, the evolution set that's about to come out, the Team Rocket set is about to come out, the gym set that's about to come out. These are heavy hitters towards the end of Scarlet Violet. I am very bullish on the market for the next year, maybe year and a half. But again, this is cyclical. What goes up must come down. It's not going to go like this, but it's going to go like this, come down and up again and down again. There will always be cycles. So don't lose hope when it comes down and say, oh, it's the end of the world, everything's going to zero. And don't go like everything's going to the moon, it's going to go up forever, and buy everything you can find. Right? Keep an open mind, stay level-headed, and remind yourself, why did you not buy that product when it was affordable to you? You probably didn't want it that bad, and it's probably not that good. Right? Then don't buy it now.
I feel that.
There you go.
And that's for me, that's awesome. Thank you for that. This is all so many nuggets in here. But what I would say also is, like, for example, for me, obviously, you said the crypto bull run. There's a big crypto bull run happening right now. And I invested in some Bitcoin, not a whole Bitcoin, obviously, but I invested in some Bitcoin back in like 2022 when it was like 15K or no, 50K. And it's like, obviously, like, there was a little thing, and then it dipped to 15K, and everyone was like, oh no, it's horrible, crypto's never coming back. And now it's like at 93K, I think, as like today. So it's just like all that type of stuff where it's like,
I have 400 Bitcoin at one point.
Really?
Yeah,
that's crazy.
In the beginning
like
of 2017. That's kind of like how I built my wealth at the very beginning. And I bought
crazy.
into crypto, put pretty much my entire liquidity into Bitcoin in the beginning of 2017. And, that was the beginning of how I was able to invest in real estate, tech companies, and so on and so forth. So I believe in the long-term prospect of crypto, but it's the same thing with crypto. The technology is great. The community and the people are not so great. There's a lot of scammers in space. I try and distance myself as far away as possible from the space because of the negative characters. But it's the same thing. You shouldn't FOMO with Bitcoin or crypto. The same thing that you shouldn't FOMO for Pokemon cards.
Yeah, exactly. That's so true. My dad got into crypto in 2017, so that's really cool. Cool. I have one more point and one more question, and then we can wrap up because I know this is going a while, and you're a very busy man. Earlier, you said that you've been able to scale. You've said this multiple times. You've been able to scale and your card shop, obviously, to getting in the past few months to you hit your goal of making $1 million a year, which is awesome. Congratulations on that. What would be your advice? And obviously, you've had multiple companies, so I'm sure you've had scaling opportunities and scaling growth. And on the cycle that Pokemon is going, obviously we think it's a good time to either scale or to take that next step. What would be your advice to how to scale, and like your tip for that?
Okay, it really depends on what you're trying to do. So at this point in my life, I'm actually trying to build equity and not make short-term profit plays, like I mentioned before. So my advice and where I'm at life at this stage of my life is probably different from someone that's trying to build their wealth or build their net worth from zero or from scratch. So right now, what I'm focused on doing is like the $1 million a year is just kind of like a metric. And next year, I'm actually going to build our collectibles business into like multiple different parts. When I mentioned companies like Tag, companies like BZ, companies like Collector, companies like StatMags, I want to kind of like build those companies up to move the hobby forward. And the shop is kind of just there as a digital marketing engine and a way for us to connect with more buyers and sellers. So however much the shop makes is actually not as important to me. When I say scale, I'm thinking long term. I'm thinking about equity. I'm thinking about the appreciation of my assets, and a lot of it is tied up in the equities in these companies. So I'm not really thinking about, hey, I need to make 10, 15, $20 million next year in cash and kind of like buy a big house, because I already have other stuff that's doing it. I would say the advice that I give to people that are trying to build their net worth from scratch is just, again, focus on the parts of the hobby that's not as hyped. So investing is very counterintuitive, right? So the moment you hear about something being really expensive and being really hyped up, it's usually already a little bit too late. So the opportunity is not there anymore. So when it comes to like modern alt arts, for example, I'm not saying the Moonbrown won't become a $3,000 card. Right now it's closing on 2,000, but the opportunity for that card to go from 2,000 to like 4,000 is a lot tougher for, let's say, let me find some undervalued part of the hobby. Let's say Shiny Treasures EX, for example. That box is like $35 a box, right? It was $100 at release when Japanese was super hyped in 2023. That box and that set, along with Paldean Fates, is actually one of the, in my opinion, undervalued sets in history, because you have the Black Charizard, the SR Charizard, you have the Bubble Mew, you have the what else? You have the Gardevoir, you have the Shiny Vault, like everything associated with that set. But that set is really undervalued right now, especially for Japanese. Like $30 a box, that's a no-brainer. In order for that to go from 30 to 60, it doesn't take that much. But the Moonbrown going from 2,000 to 4,000, I think it will take some Black on event, something crazy for that to happen. So going into 2025 in this bull market, I would say focus on areas that are not as hyped. Find things that are undervalued, and go into that. And that's vintage. In my opinion, vintage has a tremendous opportunity because not a lot of people are looking at vintage. Modern is obviously a lot more liquid when you talk about Moonbrowns and Poncho Pikachus and all these alt arts, but there's also tremendous risk when it comes to overvaluing these assets and it coming down. That very well might happen. These things have tens of thousands of pop in for PSA 10s, right? So focus on the stuff that's being overlooked, and that's vintage grails, vintage hollows, That's Japanese high-class boxes like the Shiny Treasure EX. That's maybe some Sword and Shield sealed that used to be on everyone's minds other than Evolving Skies. Like Lost Origin, Fusion Strike, Silver Tempest, Brilliant Stars. That block that's not being talked about right now because everyone is pumping or getting excited for 151, the Evolution set, and what's to come in 2025, right? Just look at things that are not being talked about right now. That's where the opportunity lies, not the ones that you see on the thumbnails on YouTube every single day. Because if you've seen it, a million other people have seen it, and they're trying to do the same thing as you, and there's less opportunities in that space.
Cool. I appreciate it. Again, find your blue ocean strategy. That's super cool. Any closing thoughts or anything else that you'd like to add before we close?
Well, I think just stick with it. For all the young entrepreneurs out there, you're going to fail and make mistakes over and over again. As long as your heart is in the right place, don't be afraid of failure, because now is the time to fail when you don't have to pay for rent, pay for your wife, pay for your kids. You know, you have nothing to lose right now. So don't be afraid of failure. Starting being 50% of the way there is kind of a cliche, but it's very true. So go out there, experiment. Don't be afraid to fail, and don't be afraid to talk to people that's a few steps ahead of you, like what you're doing right now, and learn from them. Be humble, and please remember that you're an active member of the community and society. You have to act professionally, especially when it comes to anything that involves money, right? So act accordingly. Don't think because you're young you have a different set of rules and people have to kind of like cater to what you want. You're in a transaction, both parties are equal. So if somebody else fulfills their end of the deal, you have to fulfill your end of the deal. And and stay humble. That's the most important thing.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, that's very, very important. I hope I've carried that. Thank you. Where can people find you? Obviously, your
just
big
I think probably easiest find me if you DM me on my Instagram, like my Pokemon page. I don't actually post that much on my personal page anymore. It's at J Peng Collection, and my wife is at density.cj. So if you want to buy anything, it's probably better to text her. But on Instagram definitely is the easiest way to reach me. But also don't be offended if I don't text you back, because I have like 30,000 unread emails, and so don't be offended if I don't text you back. Just text me again or leave me a comment. Again, I don't do it on purpose. So I try my best. If you have a good heart, I'll try my best to help as many young people as I can. And all
right, well, I appreciate you coming on. Thank you so much. And I'll say this before we close. I didn't expect that I would have this opportunity to meet you, because I reach out to a whole bunch of people all the time, and obviously I see you as one of those people that's many, many steps ahead of me, somewhere that I would love to be in 20 years. So the fact that you reached out meant really a lot. So thank you for coming on, and anyway, we'll see you guys all next week. Bye.
All right. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Of course.